with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, you know our show is on from Alaska to South Florida, from Southern California to Maine. And we're very pleased. We have a new affiliate. This brings us up to nearly 100 affiliates all over this great country. KRFE AM, which is 95.9 FM from Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock, Texas.
I knew that.
You know what's nice about FM? Because Steely Dan said no static FM. Just saying that.
That's why you got to modulate your voice when you do
That's
FM.
right.
And
there is no static. Right. It's perfect.
And sound very, very mysterious. But no, that's great. Here we are in Texas. And Texas is such a great state and such a business-friendly state. And, so many companies have gone there. So our message of economic freedom, unshackling the American entrepreneur, bringing our manufacturing jobs back, inspiring our small businesses, our risk takers, our inventors, to get them out there and doing all these wonderful things that they're capable of, is so important to our economy. And our economy was roaring and roaring and roaring. Hey, look, we took it on the chin. We're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of this stronger and more feisty than ever. Our entrepreneur community is going to regroup here. I'm sure great plans are being made right now for as this economy turns, and it will be quick, And I say, and now I'm an optimist. I know that you got to be an optimist when you're an entrepreneur, but I really believe we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of it sooner than people believe, and we're going to come back stronger and better. Why? Because the American economy, the American consumer, the American entrepreneur is very, very resilient. We're going to get through this, Rich.
Well, of course we are. I mean, that's the DNA of America, too. That's the exceptionalism of America. We do rise to the occasion, and we're problem solvers. So the last thing anybody should ever be doing, hello, guys on Wall Street and women on Wall Street, don't sell this country out. Don't sell us short. Don't play the shorts on this whole thing. Invest in America, because we are going to come back. Let me tell you something. After people have been sequestered for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and we get past this and things open up, I am telling you, there will be not one seat available in a restaurant forever.
Anywhere.
I mean, they're going to be nuts. I mean, the maitre d's are going to make more money than ever before to seat people ahead of everybody else. It's going to be a roaring. No, I'm not kidding. I'm serious about this. Don't ever vote against America. America is a success, and we're always that way. That's what made us wonderful.
Well, thank
the
you
bottom
for that.
line.
The world has really gone upside down when you have Congresswoman Omar, from the squad. The squad has not been very, very kind to our president.
Favorite. Not my favorite.
Not been kind to our president.
Nope.
Have said some very, very mean and hostile things. I said, hey, look, the president's doing an incredible job with this. Wowza. Then you have Dana Bash from CNN. I mean, even CNN was praising President Trump for the leadership that he was showing. Absolutely amazing. And, well, that's great, because that's what you're talking about, is how the country comes together in times of trouble. And
well, not only that, we happen to have a president right now who's a phenomenal problem solver, because he's dealt in the real world and how to solve real problems. I mean, if you think you can build easily in New York City, let me tell you, you're a problem solver. He knows how to look at the problem, take it apart, and work the problem and make it work for everyone. So the fact that he's our president is remarkable right now, that we have President Trump in office.
Well, we're going to talk about, some of the things that we're doing and the president's doing. I mean, there's a lot of money being talked about. I mean, like trillions, like a trillion seems to be like a down payment. And boy, I just don't know, what this is actually going to mean in dollars when the thing is all said and done over the next 30, 45 days. However, we're very pleased to have on with us right now former congressman from the great, great state of Indiana, David Mcintosh, who is currently the president of the Club for Growth. David, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you, Neil. It's great to be with you. It's a perfect time to be talking about exactly what you've been saying, how the American people will provide the resiliency that we need to get through this pandemic and the economic downturn that's going to come because the government, on the advice of the healthcare experts, have said basically shut everything down. So when you shut down manufacturing, you shut down services, you shut down small businesses and restaurants, that's going to be a hit to the economy. My hope is they'll be wise in realizing we can't leave it that way forever, so we're going to have to, in a few weeks, get things back going again. And then I think you're right. The American people will rise to the occasion. You already see entrepreneurs out there changing their business to accommodate what's happening. I heard about a car dealership who said, okay, everybody stay away from the dealership, but we'll come to you. You want to buy a new car? Call us. We'll drive it by. You can take a Corona-free test drive, and if you like it, we'll sell it to you. So that's that ingenuity that you were describing that the American people have, and why we're going to come through this and be better than ever.
Well, David, a few weeks, I can't imagine, the economy. I'm talking about factories. I have 3 North American factories, 3 United States factories, and I just don't know if we're ordered to close. There's a lot of things closing, but there's still many, many things that are still open, and it really depends on where in the country you are, right? It really depends on where in the country you are. But, you're talking about, or what's going out right now is, hey, look, the airlines want this, and the hotel industry wants that, and what kind of money are we going to give them? Is it going to be free money? Is it going to be loans? Is it going to be bailouts? I was very pleased to see at the SBA and that they're going to help small businesses. And what the SBA determines is a small business is with people less than 500 employees in the United States. 500 employees, you have less than 500 employees, you're a small business. And they're going to help with payroll over the next 6 weeks. And there's a formula there that they're going to pay 6 weeks worth of payroll, or at least advance you 6 weeks worth of payroll but capping out at $80,000 a year. In other words, it's 6 weeks
right.
of $80,000 a year worth of salary for as many employees as you have. But it's not a free money. It's not a bailout. It is a loan. It is a loan that has a low interest rate on it. But, you got to pay it back. Well, that's great. But it's not a bailout. So small businesses are going to step up. Hopefully they're going to get this money. They're going to get it quickly as they need it. But they're going to have to pay it back. And they should. And I don't think our small businesses have a problem with that. But what I have a problem with is bailouts, just big industries who are really, really doing well, raking it in, paying their executives all these exorbitant sorts of money, buying back stock, using money, that the government gives them to buy back stock, to pay them more money. That's wrong. Loans are fine. Bailouts are not. What say you?
Totally agree with you. And the Club for Growth has put out a policy paper to the White House and the President, to members of Congress, that gave about 20 different ideas, and that loans, not bailout grants, was a key feature to it. Another one they actually ignored because the House had already put it in the bill, but we're very worried about this paid leave mandate, because small businesses, if they don't have those loans, don't have the cash to do it. And I worry that will just accelerate layoffs and people being put on unemployment. So we urge them, don't do the mandate, but instead do the SBA loans, but also use the unemployment insurance mechanism and allow it to be available for temporary leave, so that if employers say, we have to let you go for the next 4 or 5 weeks, you can, the individual's helped by being able to receive that unemployment payment, but the small business isn't strapped with the cash flow of having to make the actual wage and salary payments. A lot of things like that. Yeah. The Treasury Department and Congress, they don't know what a small business has to do to survive, and so they come up with these ideas they think will make sense. But I just told them, look, I can tell you, if a businessman is strapped for cash, they're not going to wait and see if the government makes them whole later on. they're going to make tough decisions because they have to, and don't encourage that with this mandate. Let them have the flexibility to figure out what works best for them and their employees.
In just a couple of moments we have left before we have to break, what do you suggest for, say, the airlines?
I think, again, if they need a loan to get through this, and there's going to be a cash flow crisis for them and maybe a couple-month hit on business. But I was just talking to a good friend today who said they've made billions of dollars charging all sorts of baggage fees, and some of them charge fees to reserve a seat. None of us want to see a big, fat company like that be made whole with $50 billion of taxpayer dollars. If they need an emergency loan, but then they pay it back as they start getting passengers who come back and fly again. And that is so much better than the bailout. Now, sadly, what happens in Congress is these airlines and the industries have these big lobbyists up there, and the members pay more attention to them than they do their constituents back home. So we're going to have to fight it. But I think Republicans who rushed to go along with this first effort that was passed this week, and there are some good things in there, I think they're going to say, let's take a pause. We need to get this right. We don't want to do this where suddenly there's a $2 trillion hit to the American taxpayer.
Hey, we're on with former Congressman from Indiana, David Mcintosh, the president of Club for Growth. You're here together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman and I. We still got so much more to talk about. Very, very important things that impact your job. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Congressman David Mcintosh. Well, I should say former Congressman David Mcintosh from the great state of Indiana, and the president for Club for Growth, together with my dear friend and co-host, Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, jump right in here. What do you see, with all this money? I mean, I'm talking trillions. That's with a capital T. And as David just said, is it a 1 trillion? Is it a 2 trillion, 3 trillion? All this.
Well, they don't know yet.
Things that I'm hearing right now. But, Rich, if we give all this money out there, like we did with GM, during the last.
Well, that's the rub, isn't it?
But should, like on these big companies, as David said, are, making a lot of money. Now, maybe right now they're not, but when this thing turns, they're going to be roaring again. They're going to be in the dough. Should the American taxpayer get some form of equity?
Wow, that's a really tough question. Should they get some form of equity? I maybe feel
or a kicker, or maybe like, okay, the stock comes up, you're making all this money,
Well, the first
like
question is, wait a minute. The first question is, Neil, is it even legal to do that? So that's a good. David, I got to ask you that question. Neil's saying, if in fact money's given to American Airlines, should the American public, which would have to be through the U.S. government, I suppose, have equity in the company? What do you think? I don't even know if that's legal.
Or some sort of warrants that, over, 3 years, they're redeemable at, whatever price, and, the Treasury makes some money at this.
What do you think?
So that's what they did with General Motors, right? When they did the bailout for them, and the government got made whole. It helped General Motors get through the crisis. Ford Motors bragged that they didn't need it because they were better run. But absolutely, it should not just be an open checkbook. These guys need, if it's a loan, to pay it back. If it's a grant, then there should be warrants or equity, and they can earn their equity back by paying that back. Congress shouldn't just rush headlong into spending. Now, sadly, even in good times, they've been spending $1 trillion more than they take in. So they've got these terrible spending habits. Frankly, both Democrats and my friends on the Republican side have gotten really bad about this. And we at the Club for Growth continually warn them that they've got to be more fiscally responsible. I think the key here is for experts to come and show them among other things, the bailouts that they did in 08 and 09 were structured in a way that actually slowed the recovery. So it took years, probably as many as 6 years, for the economy to fully get back to where it had been before. If we structure it so it's a temporary aid to get through the dip, but then when things return to normal, you don't have all these new restraints and all this burden that's been put into place because they've, thrown $2 trillion at people that really didn't need it on an emergency basis, then the economy will recover much faster on its own.
Well, the bottom line is, I was listening to the president in his press release today, in his presser today, and a major question was, and he addressed, would it be right to have money go to these large corporations? And again, as you pointed out, Neil, that would it be right for them to buy their stock back at a good price right now? Would it be fair to give it to executives for bonuses, which to a degree did happen during the stimulus in 2008, right. 2009, which is just horrible. To my point of view, I thought it was a horrible optic to see that happening for U.S. corporations to do that. And the president was adamant on the fact, look, I can't write it into a bill because that's not what I do. But I can make my thoughts known. My thoughts are, I think that would be awful. So he was very much against that. The bottom line is that we must preserve jobs. We must preserve jobs. The downside, if you listen to Steve Mnuchin this week, the downside of losing all these jobs and the ripple effect through the economy could be as much on the bad side, on the worst side, worst case, 20% unemployment. That's horrible. I mean, that's something I don't think any of us want to consider right now. So anything we do with the money must be done in such a way that we preserve the average Joe and Jane American who have an opportunity to keep their job, stay in their home, drive their car eventually, and not suffer as a result of something that's nothing to do with them. It's not even a bad investment. Someone once made a comment a couple of weeks ago. I was listening on one of the cable networks. Well, if people make bad investments, they have to live with it. Wait a minute. They didn't make a bad investment. They got wiped out or they got hurt. They lost 30% because something happened totally out of the control. Nothing to do with their decision. They couldn't make a decision. So I think preserving jobs and giving them the opportunity to pay their bills is paramount.
I think that's right. And therefore, Rich, we've got to get people like you giving input to these members, even just now calling, most of their offices are shut down, but somehow getting to them. Be careful what you do. Pick the things that will actually help, particularly small businesses, survive this and keep their employees employed. One of the things we recommended, for example, was some of the tariffs that were needed to get China to come back to the table are actually hurting some manufacturers here because the machinery that was covered, they can't get made in America. And so they should go back and look at these tariffs and say, if there's something that is affected that's stopping us from creating or keeping jobs, we're going to put a temporary or ideally permanent relief on those tariffs, but we'll keep the others in place to force the Chinese not only to come to the table on a good trade agreement, but frankly, they deserve it, given how horribly they treated their own people and then ultimately unleashed this whole pandemic on the world.
I agree. I agree completely. Let me tell you, I think if those tariffs were temporarily suspended, that you want to see the Dow have some good news, that would be some good news. I know for my company it would really help. But I don't see that yet. It's not being telegraphed, but hopefully it will happen. Hey, it was really great, David. A great guest, David Mcintosh, former congressman from Indiana and the president of Club for Growth. David, thanks for being on the show.
It's great to be with you. Let me know when you want me back. I'd be glad to come anytime.
We're going to make that call. We love having you. Coming up is Jack Hanney, who is he's with the Patriot Gold Group. And we're going to talk about more coronavirus in the U.S. economy. We're going to start off with what is the best case and the worst case for the U.S. economy under this coronavirus threat that we have. We're going to talk about that. It's got a lot to do with your jobs. Stay with us.
Made in America.
sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Rich, we're very pleased to have with us right now Jack Hanney, who is the senior partner and CEO of the Patriot Gold Group. Jack, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you for having me, Neil, and it's nice to meet you, Dr. Rothman, as well.
So, one of the things that happened, when the world is kind of in these economic difficult times, the tumultuous times that we're facing now, is that people rush to dollars and gold. People want that very, very, very solid asset, dollars and gold. But now we're seeing interest rates, at zero or even negative. We're talking about right now. So I don't know, putting money in dollars might not be such a great investment. But, what are the precious metal markets doing right now? Jack, are you seeing a big uptick in people who want to acquire gold and silver and other precious metals?
Well, a lot like 2008, gold had pulled back 30%, silver had pulled back a whopping 73%. And the reason for speculators, brokerage firms, and hedge funds had to liquidate massive gold and silver positions to raise cash for margin calls. Because of the viciousness and the velocity of this sell-off that we've seen over the past 2 weeks, with the Dow going from 29,500 all the way down to in the 18,000s as early as just yesterday. What happened was they had to liquidate their gold and silver positions to cover those margin calls. So gold has pulled back, as has silver. But back in 2008, after gold had pulled back 30% and silver 73%, between 2008 and 2011, gold went up 166% and silver went up 440%. So when the liquidity returns to the market, investors will be rushing back into gold and silver.
Interesting. Next question is what is the best case and the worst case scenario for the U.S. economy, do you believe, with the coronavirus?
It's unfortunate that I have to be the bearer of this news, but we are definitely heading towards what could be a Great Depression. It's definitely going to be a deep, deep recession. I mean, we're looking at the NCAA canceling March Madness, as we know, the NBA suspending its season, Major League Baseball, the NHL, concerts, the Masters, schools closing, businesses closing. When you look at the largest public school system in the country in New York City, closing their doors for probably what will be through the summer months now, and you have two working parents at home, one of those having to stay home with the children and homeschool the children. You have the same in Los Angeles, San Francisco on lockdown, Las Vegas on lockdown. We're in uncharted territory. This is catastrophically worse than 2008. New York City is the city that never sleeps. Las Vegas, Sin City, they're both locked down. I mean, had we ever seen anything like this before?
We haven't. I mean, this has been a very unusual situation, albeit I will say that the stats, when you look at the flu, are radically worse than they are for this pandemic. But having said that, I'm not going to debate whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but the numbers just aren't even close to what happens on a yearly basis in terms of deaths. My feeling is I think the economic impact could be great. That's why I think we have to think out of the box right now to facilitate moving forward. Let me ask you this, and this is interesting. We are not like the way it was in 2008. We're not like the way it was back in 1929. We have a lot of cash. We've had a tremendous run-up of the economy. Do you feel that having someone like a President Trump there, who is a business person, who understands problems and deals in the real world and seems to go for unusual ways to get things solved. For example, creating P3s between the private sector and the public sector to move forward in some of these areas. Do you feel that that opportunity to think differently would help mitigate some of the concern that you have, which I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think the downturn could be bad, but I tend to think we have some breaks along the way. Go ahead.
A few points that I agree with you on. I do believe that the health consequences are not as dire as the flu. I think some of the economic impacts and decisions that are being made are going to be catastrophically worse than, yes, 2008 and 2000. And I also do believe that having Trump in office, who's a businessman and a dealer, perfected the art of the deal, will help mitigate the damage significantly, because he's prone to bailing out Boeing and the airlines and helping them out, because you have liberals running around wanting the money to go just to individuals, but you have to support the airlines, you have to support the big businesses, you have to support Boeing, you have to I look at the number of employees. We're now going to have to support the auto manufacturers, Ford and GM, shutting their factories and their plants. So I think.
By the way, now that you said that, I have to ask you this, because I really don't have the answer. They are going to close down, and they were discussing it. Some of the representatives from Michigan and so forth and Detroit were talking about it. Are they going to keep their people on payroll for a while?
Well, Ford just announced today that what they're doing is not only delving into their cash reserves, but they're also suspending dividends. So they have the cash available to weather the storm, to assist in their employees. And as far as the compensation for those employees that are going to be out of work, I'm not entirely familiar if they'll be getting the full compensation, but I know that Ford has announced today that they are going to suspend the dividend payments. But having someone like Trump in office who understands business, who understands the global economy, is going to mitigate the damage significantly.
Hey, we're on, Jack. We got to take a really quick break. We're together with Jack Hanney, who is the senior partner and CEO of Patriot Gold Group. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman, and we are together with senior partner and CEO of the Patriot Gold Group, Jack Hanney. So, Jack, a lot of things there that you had said, and how this was very different from 2008, from 2001, and we've had a lot of economic malaise in our country before. I mean, we're not new to this. There's been all kinds of crises. But the thing that is different with this is that, in my opinion, is, when you had the financial meltdown and you had all the mortgage crisis and all that bad stuff and mortgage loans that were packaged and repackaged and sold, all that junk debt, you had the savings and loan crisis that President George H.W. Bush, number 41, said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And he raised taxes to save the savings and loans banks. I mean, the smaller banks that all our entrepreneurs and small businesses depended on these banks. And he took the hit. He lost the election, but the banking system came out much stronger as a result of him doing what he did. Not great for him politically, but it was good for America.
He threw himself on the sword to save the... Is that what you want to think?
Yeah.
Okay.
But now
I'll think it if you will.
But, those were really, really big structural issues with our economy.
Fundamentals.
Like really fundamental.
Right.
Like, hey, look, your banking system's broke, or you got all this non-performing loans out there and that nobody's writing it off, and you're going to have to take the hit. You're going to have to go 2 steps backwards to go 3 steps forward. In my humble opinion, This is not like that. This is like this came upon us like totally out of the blue. I mean, it's like a week ago, I would never, ever believe that, we're here. In an hour from now, it's like changing by the hour, if not by the minute. But as quickly as it's come, it could go that quickly as well. And the fundamentals of the U.S. economy right now are strong. The banks have money. The banks, we're not talking about right now bailing out our banks because of the regulation, because of having to build up the reserves, the banks have money. The banks are in decent shape right now as long as they have the liquidity, because what's happening is everybody's calling in their credit lines right now.
The feds are helping with that.
Well, if you have credit lines right now, they're just hoarding cash. I mean, every company is hoarding cash. If you have money on your credit line, call it in before they can, renegotiate your credit line, right? So, but the banks are funding it. They have the money to fund that. Mm-hmm. Nobody's saying we don't have the money to pay the people who want the money, who, it's their money, we got to give it back, but we don't have it. That's not happening. The banks have very strong balance sheets. And that's one of the reasons why I think that this is going to be a V curve. Okay, we came down. It was almost like very sudden. But then it's going to, like, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For this very fast and sudden drop, there's going to be an equal reaction to that once we see a little light at the end of the tunnel. Americans are just so eager from some good news right now, and they're going to be right back out there doing wonderful things. And I think that could be, 30, 45, 60 days. And it doesn't have to be a long-term event. That's what I think. But you think very different than that, right?
It's not that I think very different. I think if, and I don't know how the two of you, how you feel about what Bill Ackman had said about shutting everything down for 30 days and having an extended spring break here. I think that may be a solution. I just know that the information that keeps rolling out daily about the spread of the virus, the increase in the cases, the increase in the number of the deaths, I think the way that it's rolling out and the uncertainty could prolong this.
So you think we should just shut her all down for 30 days and everybody goes home?
Take the hit.
Hey, I think if we were to shut it down, my daughter is 12. She's in 7th grade. She had 2 weeks off, for spring break. Her school's now closed. I do believe that if we were to shut things down for 30 days, shut things down, like Bill Ackman.
Does it mean like everything? Does that mean like every factory, every job, everywhere? There's nothing going on in the economy?
I think what would happen is if we were to do something like that, 30 days out from now, we'd see a dramatic increase and rise in consumer confidence in the stock market, prices, travel, airlines. I think if we were to somehow be able to quarantine this virus and everyone were to just do an extended stay at home, close the banks, close the markets, close it, shut it down. And it doesn't have to necessarily be 30 days. It could be 2 weeks. It could be the spring break. But, parents are now faced with having their children home, not only here in the month of March, but April, May, all the way through the summer months. There's a lot of uncertainty about how long the closures of whether it be restaurants, bars, restricted travel will be. And I think a drastic measure like that actually would instill a lot of confidence and a lot of security. I think initially, it's just, look, a 30-day, just shut it down.
Jack, I agree with Jack. First of all, I don't see any point of doing any of this if we don't do it across the board. Not 50% or 70%, 100%. I think this country would get behind this and say, listen, this is what we're doing. We're shutting down. It's 14 days, 15 days. We're just hunkering in. Let the right people get out there, get ahead of this, stop these numbers, and then we're going to reopen with a roar. And trust us, we're going to do this. You know what? I don't think Jack's wrong. I think that gets ahead of the numbers.
Say you were to do it next week, and you were to shut it down for the remainder of March and the first week or two of April. All of a sudden, there we are, second week in April. this economy will come roaring back. There'll be travel, summer travel, money poured into the economy, people reinstilling that confidence leading up to the election. And I think it will be handled in a way that Trump can show that, he's the great leader that we elected president, that he takes drastic measures, and that he really, solved what could have been the way it's rolling out now. The daily press briefings and the constant, hearing from, the Surgeon General, and when you see Cuomo on TV every single day talking about the dire straits that New York is in, and then you get San Francisco shutting down and New York shutting down. It's rolling out slowly, and it's like this impending doom. So personally, I think a drastic measure like that, like Bill Ackman said, shut it down would be the best thing in the world. It would stop the sell-off in the stock market. I mean, the Dow today has it's been a roller coaster. Here we are 5 minutes before the bell, and we're still up 200 points, but it's been a roller coaster of a day where it was up, it was down. It was down 700 points at one point. It was up 300, 400 at another, and we're going to see where it closes for the day. But I got to tell you, that it's unsettling. It's a lot like in life. Jack, like the most discomforting and most uncomfortable place to be in life is when there's this not knowing, right? This indecisiveness, when you don't know. You do something like shut it down, and I think that can be what really saves this country from a deep, deep recession or a depression.
Hey, Jack, great points, very, very good points. We really appreciate it. Jack Hanney, who's a senior partner and CEO of the Patriot Gold Group, and an incredible commentator on the economy. Jack, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being with you both, and
stay safe.
It was a great show. Thank you. You as well. Let's see what happens here. Okay.
Here's an elbow bump going across the airwaves. Great to have you with us. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, interesting ideas from Jack.
I kind of like that.
But, here's the problem is that, there is an incredible amount of anxiety right now, right in the marketplace. We all know that. But, as a small business owner, you have your relationships with your banks, right? And you have the relationship with your employees, very important. You have a relationship with your customers. You have a relationship with your vendors. But that banking relationship is very, very important.
That's correct.
And, banks are based on, collateral and your ability to borrow. And if you're not doing things and you're generating expenses, but you're not generating collateral, they shut you down. They just completely shut you down. You go into a default. And the way loan agreements are written is that you're in a default. The banks could step in and take over your company. I mean, it's as simple as that. And it could happen quickly, and it could happen very quickly. So someone's got their life of work on the line, and then all of a sudden they lose it. I mean, it happens all the time. And, banks have customers that, that they like and they get along with, and they try to find solutions. Others are just files, and they don't even have any personal relationship at all.
Exactly.
That's why our community banks are so important. And, it's
always were.
And because they know the local entrepreneur, whereas these big, sort of national institutions, they don't know.
It's a cold calculation.
Right. So, this guy owes us money. Okay, he's got some assets. He's got some real estate. Close them down. Take it in. Let's limit our losses. Let's take that one. Let's take that one. I know this guy. We'll give him a break. So that's the cold reality of this. So there's millions of entrepreneurs and small business owners right now, really sweating bullets because what world do they wake up tomorrow? I mean, they all work their life, and in the end, you're an entrepreneur, you work hard, you have your ups and downs, you hit walls, you hit walls, you hit walls. Sometimes you get a little break, you get a little lucky, you start accumulating a little bit of wealth. It's not like you see it, but then you start to see it over a long period of time, and then that's what you retire on, and that's what, you work for all your life. That's what you leave to the kids. That's what you go on vacation with, right? And then all of a sudden, like one day, it's all gone, It's like,
well, that's the sad part. And that's where the average person just gets wiped.
But that's why,
not even a bad decision.
But that's why if you say shut her down and you don't have any ability to operate, what do you do? I mean, what do these poor people do? What do not poor people, what do these entrepreneurs do when they go home at night and they got all of in rent? And now, they're going to be foreclosed on rent. Now, okay, the government said, okay, for government loans, we're not going to do any foreclosures.
Right. But that's mortgages. That's mortgages.
But that's not the private mortgage world.
Right.
That's government.
That's Fannie and Freddie.
That's government mortgages, not the private world. They foreclose it. They take your home. They take your business. They take everything. So what do? You got to fight back. You got to fight back. Yes. Do you stay home for 30 days and just say, okay, I'm going to be home for 30 days and I'm going to be in complete misery because I know that when I go back, I lose everything? Or do you fight? Do you try to stay above water? Do you find a way to survive? So I think everybody right now is just trying to find a way to survive. And I don't know if that's like tell everybody to go home and pretend like you're on spring break. I mean, I don't know how that works.
Well, that's where leadership comes in. This is how you have a populist president and he gets the message out. Here's the point. In all of this, I think, and I heard this in the pressers when they had the folks come out and talk about what we're doing. Everyone wants to know how long. This is multiple questions asked different ways. How long will it be until we can get back to normal? Everyone wants to know that. How long will it be before my kids can go back to school? And no one has the answer right now, and I think they need to define that in some form and fashion. There needs to be a big look, a big decision. That look, it's going to take us 14 days to get this thing under control. We're going to do the following. I think they need to clarify. Clarification is important. People will go along with things, Neil, if they understand it. And there are provisions to take care of them for the 2 weeks. They will go along with it because it's the right thing to do. That's the amazing thing about Americans, Neil. We're very self-sacrificing. They just have to understand it. If they don't understand it, they can't make that decision. They have to feel like they're part of it. They're part of this help. That's what they want to know.
Well, Rich, you get the final word. And thank you for that. It's a very, very complex situation. But we're survivors. We're all survivors. Entrepreneurs, small business owners, they're survivors. They find a way to survive. But we got to let them fight. We got to let them fight. As long as we let them fight, they will find a way to survive. But that's all the time we have today. But we will be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.